And we are now live.
Good morning. Agenda item number 1 is the call to order. It's 9:30 a.m. on February 23rd of 2023. My name is Damian Meyer, and I call this meeting of the Citizens Clean Elections Commission to order. I'd like to ask audience members to please keep their microphones on mute. And with that, we'll take attendance. Commissioners, please identify yourselves for the record. Commissioner Chan may join us later. Commissioner Payton is ill, but let's go ahead and I guess identify yourselves for the record, starting with Commissioner Kimball.
Mark Kimball.
Good morning, Commissioner Kimball. And then Commissioner Titla, are you there on the phone?
Yes, Steve Titla here. Good morning, everybody.
All right. Good morning, Commissioner Titla. So we do have 3 commissioners present, which is a quorum. So we'll proceed on to agenda item number 2, which is the discussion and possible action on meeting minutes for January 19th of 2023. Any discussion on the minutes? And if
Chairman,
not,
I make the motion to approve the minutes.
all right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second?
I second that, Commissioner Kimball.
All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. We'll go ahead and vote on that motion. All in favor of approving the January 19, 2023 minutes? We'll do this by roll call. Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Moving along to agenda item number 3, which is discussion and possible action on executive director's report. So Tom, I'll turn this over to you, and also note Gina Roberts did attend the National Association of Election Directors conference last week. And I know she wanted to give us a little update on what she learned and observed there. So I'll just leave it to the 2 of you to share that with us. So Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for being here. I think, as you may know, and we've done some, at least some social media promotion of this, there is actually a runoff election in 2 city council races in Phoenix. And early voting has begun there. As you can see, we'll be discussing voter education at length later in the agenda. Throughout January, we kept up a good clip and a continued good clip of outreach activities. And I think that that's important. And, I guess after I wrap this up, then Gina, I'll turn it over to you, or let's talk about it in the context of outreach. Care. I wanted to really quickly note we're working on the remaining improvements to the new office. So we're planning based on last month to be in person next month. There will be, and Paula, correct me if I'm wrong, but a person can attend both virtually. Well, can't attend both virtually and in person, but a person can choose between being in person and attending virtually. But we should be ready for that. I think that's kind of, if there's anything else that I really wanted to make sure that we the Court of Appeals did reject Carrie Lake's appeal from her election challenge, the 2022 election. And I think that I think that sort of wraps up the highlights from my perspective. So unless you have questions for me, Gina, I think, all right, hand it back to you to hand to Gina.
Gina, go ahead.
Thank you, and Chairman Meyer, Commissioners, good morning. Yes, I had the opportunity to attend the winter conference for the National Association of State Election Directors last week. This is a conference that pulls together our state election directors and their staff across the nation together. And essentially, the conference had two primary focuses. One is election security, both through a cybersecurity perspective and physical security, physical being equipment, but also personnel. And so we had the opportunity to hear from our partners that election officials have established and created partnerships with agencies through the federal government. So we're talking about the Department of Homeland Security, their cybersecurity division, their Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is CISA. They have a section specifically for election security there. We've heard from the Department of Justice and the FBI, and basically conversations again focused on how we can continue to keep election officials safe throughout their duties, what kind of threats exist, and what kind of new developments have been made and resources and tools that are available for election officials through these security agencies, through the federal government, and learning more just about working groups that exist throughout the nation, again, with the primary focus of election security, both again, that physical, but also cybersecurity initiatives. And the second portion of the conference really focused on communications and voter education, which, again, from my experience in working in elections, anytime there's a discussion about, whether there's an issue or, whether we're talking about election administration, it all ultimately comes back to how do we communicate this to the public? What is the voter education component that is occurring here? So we had the great opportunity to hear some folks on what their voter education and outreach and communication tactics are, so we can learn from other states, learn best practices. There was a panel discussion on actually how national media covers elections and election results, which was helpful as well, so we can learn to better communicate with the media, understand their perspective, and there was just additional opportunities to learn more about, if you're developing a new program. Again, it always boils down to that voter education component. So that was the main 2 points and takeaways from the winter conference. And again, I think as we continue to go through these types of meetings, we always see voter education and communications and outreach emerge as one of the most critical tactics that election officials need to employ to really run successful elections. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the conference.
Any
Yeah,
commissioners have any
Chairman.
questions? Commissioner
Yeah.
Titla?
Yeah, in the conference, Arizona, how do you think we rank versus the rest of the nation as far as our election administration is?
As far as the administration of election goes, Chairman Meyer, Commissioner Titla, Arizona has actually long been lauded as a leader in election administration, both from Arizona having the history of launching online voter registration to our long history with successful vote by mail, and the security measures that we have. As we know, Maricopa County has long been in the national spotlight since the 2020 election. And what we hear at these conferences is that, as many times as the county has been tested or scrutinized, there's always a saying, oh, we wish, we weren't Maricopa County, so we wouldn't have to go through that. But the discussion always ends up on their practices withstood that scrutiny, that everything, that their documented practices, everything that came out of that election proved that the policies and procedures and the laws that we have in place are effective. So when we talk about Arizona as a whole nationally compared to other states in our election administration, we tend to be a leader there. We have again a very successful history when it comes to vote by mail and our auditing procedures, and so I think when we are compared nationally, Arizona definitely does rank up there.
Gina, you talked a little bit about, there was a discussion about communicating or reporting to the national media. I know with all the attention, Maricopa County has received. A lot of our officials have been talking with the media. Can you tell us sort of any recommendations or share with us kind of how that conversation went? Or what
Sure.
that program materials were on that?
Sure, Chairman Meyer, commissioners. Really, this panel discussion was an opportunity for election officials to hear the process of the national media and what they go through to ensure that they are reporting accurate election results to the public. And so ultimately what it came down to is establishing communication and partnership between the elections offices and with the media, so they understand when will results be coming out, what is the time frame. So if we're not going to be done on election night, what happens afterwards? And this is the same type of communication and voter education that we do with the public. And so we were able to hear from the media about their teams in place. It's not just one or two folks. They actually have full teams, bodies, I think upwards of 15 people who are working on this to make sure that they are pulling the data from the websites correctly, so that they could get that information out to their viewers. So it really boiled down to making sure that the election officials who are going to be reporting the results and the national media who are covering that jurisdiction have an understanding about really what the results mean, when they're coming out, what does this mean? Are these early ballots only? What does it mean that 100 precincts have, reported, things like that? So it really was just a communication back and forth so we could learn each other's processes.
Was there any discussion about just this, this section of folks out there who just refuse to believe the results and what all the reporting? I mean, you spend 5 minutes on social media. Of course, we had the big story here yesterday with the release of the AG findings. That was, could have happened a long time ago. Was there a discussion of how do we get through to this group of people who just refuse to believe what's, the results of the election?
Mr. Chairman, commissioners, in this particular panel discussion, it did not evolve into that particular point. It was more about ensuring that the national media does not call a race incorrectly, which we have actually experienced here in Arizona before. We've had a news agency where they had to, I believe actually it was the AP, where they had to retract because they had called a race incorrectly. And so it was more focused about that. In terms of establishing confidence that these are the final and accurate results, no, the panel did not focus on that.
But I mean, the fact they have this team and they do all this work, I mean, doesn't that sort of speak to that issue? Or it just...
Mr. Chairman, my apologies. Yes, it does. I understand your point there, because they have this opportunity where they're communicating to their viewers and they have quite a wide reach. So, coming down to, trying to establish that trust that, yes, these are the final official results. I think there is an opportunity there. I think there is an opportunity for them, potentially to give that context of these results that they were learning from the election officials directly and what this means, like these are, or we're expecting more ballots to come in, or, we still have 3 more days for the signature verification process, or, for curing of signatures. So I think there are opportunities there that will help build trust with their viewership about why these results are accurate and official, and that there are potentially more ballots coming into the final tallies. But we did not have the opportunity to have those discussions there. But I do agree that that opportunity should be forthcoming.
Thank you, Gina. Anyone else have any questions? All right. So Tom, back to the executive director's report, there's a lot of legislation. There's 30 some pages of bills we're tracking. Anything stand out as particularly concerning? And maybe Mike will answer this, or anything we need to keep a close eye on there?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, at this point, there isn't anything really earth-shattering or concerning for the commission. There are quite a few election bills, as you've seen, but none of them directly affect the commission. And for the most part, I would imagine that the governor's not going to sign them. So it'll be very interesting to see how far they go, how far they go and they make it to her desk, if what she does. But I'm assuming she will veto most of them. But like I said, most of the bills don't affect the commission itself. So I think we're doing fairly well this year.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything further on the executive director's report and this agenda item, or can we move on to item number 4?
Chairman, this is Steve Titla. I got knocked off the Zoom, so I just called in. I'm back online now. I make a motion to approve the executive report.
Sure, I think Commissioner Titler, we don't need to approve the report. We can just finish our discussion on it and move on.
Okay, all right. Yeah, excuse me. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so let's go on to agenda item number 4, which is discussion and possible action on final approval of proposed amendments to Arizona Admin Code Title II, Chapter 20, Article 3, Standard of Conduct for Commissioners and Employees, Sections R2-20-305, Reporting Suspected Violations, and R2-20-306, Disciplinary and Other Remedial Actions. That was a mouthful. Okay, so this item is for final approval of 2 rule amendments to clarify the process by which a person could lodge a complaint with the commission regarding a particular commissioner's actions should something like a conflict of interest arise. The main purpose of these amendments is to close a gap in our rules, and the rules only provided for a procedure to handle complaints against employees, but not regarding commissioners. We have not, as the commissioners will call, I think, Tom, we approved these in the form they are now, sent them out for the 60-day period for public comment. We have not received any written comments. If anyone is appearing today or attending today in the public that would like to comment on these amendments, now is the time to do that. I don't see any participants here. But if anyone would like to comment, please raise your hand. Is anyone there? Okay. Is there any discussion among the commissioners or any questions for staff regarding these amendments? They're in your packet. So if there's no questions, then we can have a motion to approve, but I do want to give everyone a chance to ask any questions. Okay, no questions. Can I get a motion to approve? Commissioner Kimball?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the proposed amendments referenced in item 4 of today's agenda.
Is there a second?
Chairman, I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion to approve the amendments in item 4 of our agenda today, which is R2-20-305 and 306. We'll go ahead and call the roll. Commissioner Kimball, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Titla?
Aye.
This is Commissioner Meyer. I vote aye. So the amendments are approved unanimously, vote of 3-0. Moving on to agenda item number 5. Each year, the commission has adopted a voter education plan designed to promote participation and increase confidence of voters by providing information on elections and candidates. While there's not a general election this year, there is election activity, including local elections, and more importantly, planning for 2024. Gina Roberts, our voter education director, will be presenting an overview of what we've accomplished in 2022 and to outline the projects the staff is planning for 2023. Gina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I am going to pull up a presentation here. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. Unless I hear otherwise, I'm going to assume that you can see it. So let's get started here. Here's slideshow. Okay. So I wanted to start off by going through what our current electorate looks like, our demographics. As we know, Arizona, we have 15 counties, and our voter education plan is geared towards meeting those 15 counties. Currently, with our voter registration statistics, we are seeing about a little over 4 million registered voters across the state. And I have a comparison here just between our 2022 general election and where we stand in the last reported numbers of January 2023, just a few months difference there. So we're not seeing obviously a big shift in those numbers. But what stands out, and this is normal, this is standard for the state of Arizona. You can see here that our 3 largest voting blocks are going to be the Republican Party, our Democratic Party, and then of course we have a large voting block of voters who are not affiliated. So these would be our independent voters, the OTH category there. So again, we're about a third. Turnout, we see in the general election, we were at 62.5% turnout. And that's on par for a midterm election. And it is a good number in terms of comparison for our other years. So when we look at previous midterms, you can look at 2018 there and 2014, you can see, it's a little bit less than 2018, but it is still much higher than when we were all the way back to 2014 in previous years. So, we're definitely on par with what turnout typically is for a midterm election. And then, of course, in our primary election, the numbers are typically lower there, we see, and that is just because it is a primary. We know we typically have lower turnout there. And we're looking at the almost 35% turnout. So where does that put us nationwide for the general election for midterms? We ranked 16th. So the states that we typically see that come in, first, second, and third, we're talking about the states that typically have all mail, where they're mailing out a ballot to everybody, and categories such as, perhaps same day voter registration can make an impact too. But in terms of Arizona, we ranked 16th. So this is still good. These numbers are good. They're growing. We're going in the right direction. And again, we're in a midterm election, so we would not see those numbers as high as we would in a presidential election. So what did voters consider in 2022? We had a U.S. Senate seat that was on the ballot that drew a lot of attention nationwide. Of course, we had our 9 congressional districts. And then we had all of these statewide elections, which were on the ballot. As you know, we had a gubernatorial election, which received a lot of attention. And then, of course, our other executive offices, such as Secretary of State and Attorney General. We also had, since it was a general election, our ballot measures. So we had our propositions that were on the ballot, and then we also had the judicial retention elections. And of course, if there were any local elections, so at the county level, the city and town or special districts. So it was quite a full ballot for voters to consider, especially when we take into account the judicial retention elections. You're definitely looking at a double-sided ballot, a lot of choices for voters to consider, which means that voters really had to do their homework to learn about the candidates and the issues that were on the ballot. So what did Clean Elections communicate to voters in the 2022 election cycle? We always focus on logistics when it comes to voting. So that would be, registering to vote, or how do I get my ballot? If I want to vote early, or if I want to vote in person or on election day, what do I need to bring with me to the polls? When do I return my ballot? What's the deadline for this key event? How do I know that my ballot was counted, or, that the election was secure? So we really covered the logistics of voting, but also election administration. And again, that ranges everything that a voter would need to know from A to Z to be able to cast their ballot. We cover in our messaging. We also help them not just in the logistics, but also learning about the candidates and the issues on their ballot. So we have voter education in regards to the candidates that are running and seeking office, and also the issues, so that they can make an informed vote. to do this, we communicate what the tools and resources that the commission has available. So obviously we have our voter education guide and our debates. And again, that goes back to educating voters about what the candidates are, who the candidates are, where they stand on the issues, and of course the logistics of voting as well. And we even had voter education this year, and I should say public education on how to run for office. We had the opportunity to develop some candidate training videos that cover the clean elections process if you wanted to be a clean elections candidate and receive and opt into the clean funding program. So we had a lot to communicate to voters this cycle. And as I mentioned, it was a full ballot, a lot of choices for voters to make. And so it really takes time to be an informed and educated voter. And we made sure that we had all of the information that a voter would need so that they could cast their ballot in the correct process, so that they know that it was counted, but also that they can make that informed vote with the choices that they were making on their ballot. These are just some examples of what this voter education looks like to capture voters' attention. These are some of our paid media opportunities that we had here. So you'll see social media posts, you'll see print options that we ran in the newspapers. Again, we have messaging related to independent voters. Here we have voter education about election administration and process that's done in American Sign Language. We talk about how to get a ballot by mail, and that you've got to make sure you sign that affidavit envelope. Our youth voting, to capture our youth voters, to get them to participate. These are just some examples of Instagram reels and ads that we had. Again, this is all part of our youth campaign. We had the opportunity to partner with Pinal County to create a palm card. So every voter that went and voted in person in Pinal County was given one of these palm cards that talked about how can they confirm after they leave that their ballot was counted. And, if they have any issues, where to go for that official information. Again, more print ads, trying to get voters to get to accurate official election information. Again, independents in the primary, our voter education guide. So you can see we had a lot of messaging out there for voters throughout the election cycle. So speaking of the voter education guide, as we know, that is one of our primary goals during a primary and general election cycle. And in 2022, for the primary, we mailed out about 2.3 million pieces, and in the general, about 2.2. So definitely a lot of communication going directly to voters' mailboxes. And in the primary, we had 35 statewide candidates and 197 legislative candidates total. In the general, that drops down, right? We now have the nominees. So we had 15 statewide candidates and 137 legislative candidates. The great thing about our voter education guide is it typically ranks high when we talk to voters about a trusted resource for voting information. And again, this is going directly to the mailboxes of voter households, so they don't have to search far for accurate official election information. And of course, we like to make this as accessible as possible. So we provide multiple versions of the guide. We automatically mail it out in English and Spanish. We have a large print version for voters. We try to create it in as many different languages as we can for the moment. That includes working with our tribal partners, where we had a Navajo version and Apache version, again with our partners over at the Arizona Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, where we created an American Sign Language version. We make sure that the versions that we have on our website are accessible with screen readers. And of course, we have a very long-standing partnership with Sun Sounds of Arizona. Very grateful to them for their partnership, because essentially they take the guide and they read it. They create an audio recording, so anybody who has difficulty with their vision can call this toll-free number and have the guide read to them. And so that's a really great service, and we appreciate our partners there, because this is probably one of the longest partnerships that we've had in terms of the voter education guide. And again, it's just another avenue for us to make sure that the voter guide is as accessible as possible. And we'll continue to look at opportunities to provide even more versions available based off of the feedback we get from voters. We also had our debates. Again, given that we had all of the executive offices on the ballot, all of our statewide offices and in our 30 legislative districts, and we did have a US Senate debate, it was a very busy debate season. This is a screenshot of one of our legislative district debates. We streamed those live on YouTube. Our statewide ones were broadcast on TV. And we had in the primary, we had 35 candidates total at the statewide level. And so we were grateful to have our debates with all of those candidates, with the exception of one where it ended up being a Q&A. And then for the statewide general, again, we had 15 candidates total. We had one Q&A as well. And then we had our legislative debates as well. So, we are continuing to work on ensuring that we can get as much candidate participation as possible in these debates. That way, obviously, the more candidates that participate, the better it is for the voters to hear directly from them. And we do have a recap of our debate process here. We did share this on social media, so maybe you've seen it, but we thought this was a good behind the scenes clip so to give you a sense of what it is when we go through the debate process, the planning that we undertake, and what it looks like on the ground. So I'll go ahead and play this for you. It's a short video.
Clean Elections has been bringing the Voters of Arizona debates for about 20 years now. The Voters of Arizona mandated that we host debates for candidates that are running for statewide and legislative office. Debates are a very important process to democracy and to voters being able to be prepared when they fill out their ballot. Debates are one of the few opportunities that voters have where they can hear directly from the candidates, and that's specifically through the Clean Elections debate process. It takes quite a bit of effort to bring forth the production of our debates. It takes well over a year in planning because we are hosting debates for every statewide office that is on the ballot and every single legislative office that's on the ballot. And that planning process includes everything from, as a state government agency, working through the procurement process, identifying our broadcast partner, coordinating with all of the candidates and their schedules to make sure that they can appear, reaching out to voters across the state so that you can get your questions in and answered by the candidates. So it is definitely a very intense process and it takes us a lot of time, but we are always happy to put in the effort for our Arizona voters. It takes a lot of effort to make sure that any materials that come out from Clean Elections, that we have it in the most accessible format so that all voters across the state can access the information they need in the format that they're comfortable with. Clean Elections, we are the state's nonpartisan voter education agency. This was what the voters created when they passed the Clean Elections Act in 1998. And again, we're here for you to help you through the electoral process so you can vote informed.
So the reason why I wanted to show that video is because I think it's important to get those photos, that behind the scenes feel where you can see the amount of people that were there at our statewide debates. You can see the media coverage. You can see the candidates and them engaging with the media, and all of that gets communicated back to voters. So there was a lot of moving pieces to build out our debate process. And again, the images that you saw there, the behind the scenes, that was just at the statewide level. That doesn't begin to cover what is encompassed in our legislative debates as well. So really, we are the state of Arizona's debate authority. And I think it's really important to acknowledge the work that goes into creating those debates and executing them for voters, because it is, again, it continuously ranks high as a trusted source of voter information when we talk directly to voters about where they get their election education and where they get their information on the candidates. So it continues to meet the mission and the goals of the Clean Elections Act in promoting participation in the political process, but also ensuring that the campaigns are focused on the issues. And that's what our debates do. They connect the voters with the candidates about the issues that the voters care about the most. So let's see, we'll go ahead and if Chairman Meyer, commissioners, I'm going to jump into the plan for this year for 2023, unless you'd like me to pause and take questions on any of the efforts we've done in 22 at this point, or I'm happy to keep going if we want to do that at the end.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Kimball.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kimball.
Gina, I had one brief question. The palm cards that you handed out in Pinal County about what happens to your ballot now, is that something you envision expanding into other counties in the future?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball. That's a great question. And so I'll talk a little bit about why we did this with Pinal County. Perhaps if you'll recall, in the primary election, there were some issues with Pinal County and the way the election was ran. And so they made some changes. The County Board of Supervisors made some changes when it came to the election director. The county recorder resigned her position and then took over the elections department to run the election in the general election. And so because there were concerns about how the election was ran with the ballots that went out, there was some, essentially what happened was some voters received races on their ballot that they shouldn't have. And so really, when it came down to the changes that they were making, we had a great relationship with our partners, our election partners over at Pinal County, and they wanted to continue to work on building trust with their voters on the election. And so they reached out to us and we came up with this palm card idea. That way we knew when the voters left after voting that they knew who the official source was to contact if they had any questions. And so that's how this occurred. I do like the idea of potentially expanding that and reaching out to our other counties to see if that was helpful. We'll have to do some follow-up with Pinal County. But the feedback that I've heard so far was that the poll workers loved it because it was a tool for the poll workers where if the voters had any questions, they could say, here, take this palm card. This has everything that you need, the contact information that you need so that you can follow up after the fact and have that confidence. So we know it was a successful tool for the county and for the poll workers. So I'd like to follow up with Pinal County and get more information if possible to see how they felt the voters reacted to those palm cards. And it does sound like it's the opportunity to expand on that further because at this point, it does seem that it was a successful opportunity.
Well, I think it's a great idea. And obviously there's the concerns about what happens to my ballot are not limited to one county. People, whether they vote provisional, whether they vote a regular ballot, are constantly concerned about how do I know it's actually going to be counted. And I think this is something that would be a real good tool to expand to as many counties that are willing to work with us on it.
Chairman Meyer, Commissioner Kimball, thank you. Thank you for that feedback. We will absolutely look into expanding that.
Thank you.
All right. Shall I jump into 2023 then?
Real quick, Gina, I just want to commend you, Tom, staff on all the work that goes into the debates. I know how hard you work. We know how hard you work. They're really a tremendous resource for voters. I attended, I know at least one of those and saw them in action. It's really great. So thank you so much for all your work on that. It was really, really appreciated and you really did a service for the voters of the state. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge all of the hard work that Paula put into this process. There's a lot that goes into in terms of procurement and making sure we have the resources we need. And Paula is our rock when it comes to debates. So thank you for that. And jumping into 2023, I always like to take a step back and look at our preamble. This helps to ensure that we are on the right path and meeting our goals that the voters had when they designed the Clean Elections Act. And so the preamble, the people of Arizona declare our intent to create a clean election system that will improve the integrity of Arizona state government by diminishing the influence of special interest money and will encourage citizen participation in the political process and will promote freedom of speech under the US and Arizona constitutions. Campaigns will become more issue-oriented and less negative because there will be no need to challenge the sources of campaign money. So what I highlighted in red there, those are the sections that I think really stand out for the voter education program. Hopefully you will see this in the plan for 2023. Back in December, Mike presented the budget to the commission, and part of that budget included approving our cap for paid media public education spending. And so that gives us a budget of about $2.3 million. We typically we'll operate under that to make sure we don't exceed the cap. And as we mentioned, as the chairman mentioned, this year we have local elections that are occurring throughout 2023. And some of the potential paid media tactics that we will utilize to reach voters include our standard tactics, which would be videos, radio reads. We would have print ads out of home. That would mean billboards. So right now we have billboards that are in Phoenix District 6 and 8 to promote the City of Phoenix runoff election. And of course, our digital ads and paid search. Paid search continues to be a very important resource for the commission because when we have voters who are going to their phones and pulling up Google, which is just a search engine, we want to make sure that Clean Elections appears at the top of those searches. That way we know that we are getting voters' first clicks to get them directly to that official accurate election information. As far as messaging goes this year, again, the standard logistics, what we covered that we did in 2022, we'll continue going forward with. And again, what's on my ballot, the candidates and the issues, our tools to help them in that area, but also civics. Civic education is a big component when it comes to full circle of promoting that participation in the political process, especially since we are in a year that we don't have a statewide primary and general election, right? We're in an odd year. We have these local elections. Unfortunately, we see low turnout in local elections, and those can arguably be just as important, or if not more important, than some of our, more elections that get more featured prominently in the news. And it's important that voters understand what these local elections do and how they impact them. So why is it important to vote for your city council member? Because they make decisions on police and fire, on your trash services, on your library hours. And so all of those things impact a voter's daily life. And so we want to connect the voter with their local government so they understand what these elected officials are responsible for, and hopefully make that connection to the ballot as well. So we will continue to focus on the logistics of voting in our messaging, the candidates and the issues, but also help establish that connection to these local elections and why they're important. So to kick off this year, we typically do this in every odd year. So this is a standard practice of ours. We will engage in research. Research is critical to our voter education plan because it helps us connect directly with the voters to understand what their needs are. So we can hear from voters and understand, what is it exactly that you think that you need more information on, more education on? Is it, the voter registration process, or, do you understand that independents can vote in the election? In the primary election? Do you understand what that process is? Do you need more voter education on, the ballot by mail process? So it's understanding what voters need in terms of logistics, but also it gets down to understanding their awareness of the tools and resources provided by Clean Elections, because as we've discussed before, when we talk about voter education, in this day and age of misinformation, it's very important that voters understand where the messaging is coming from, where the information is coming from, so they know it's coming from a trusted source. And as the state's nonpartisan voter education agency, it's important that they understand the services that Clean Elections provides so they know they're getting the right information. So we'll do an online survey, and then we will host focus groups. And so our plan is to kick this off in March and April. And the survey will help us give us that data that we need to identify those voter education needs and understand more about also debates and how voters utilize the debates, and as well as our voter education guide and the information they need to be civically engaged. And the focus groups, which are my personal favorite, is where we get to actually talk to the voters directly. We bring them in, we communicate with them, and we just get to hear that qualitative feedback from them. And we take that information, and that will help shape our plans for this year, but also for 2024. It will help guide our efforts for the 2024 elections. And this is, again, it's an opportunity for us to pause, hear directly from the voters on what they say their needs are, and make sure that we are keeping our voter education plan and our messaging in alignment with what the voters' needs are directly. We'll also have another online survey to keep a pulse on the awareness and public sentiment regarding public policy issues. And the reason why this is important is because it goes down to connecting the candidates and the voters on the issues that matter to them. So we had the opportunity in 2022 to host, to produce some surveys about the issues, and that drove the questions that we asked at the debates, along with the questions we received from the voters directly. But it's important for us to continue to keep a pulse on the issues that Arizona voters say are important to them. That way we can ensure that we are connecting the voters and the candidates on those particular issues. We will continue to expand our public affairs efforts. This includes, as part of that research component, hosting in-depth interviews with community-based organizations, our partners across the community, whether it's counties or whether it's a nonprofit entity or other entities or organizations that are focused on voter outreach. And so it'll help us connect with them to understand what their needs are, because the more partnerships and relationship building that we can do with the community, it helps us directly connect with the voters on the ground as well. So we're taking some time this year to include that as part of our research. And this also includes us doing exercises to make sure that we are continuing to better understand what our brand is and how voters, again, acknowledge clean elections, because again, it comes back down to making sure that they know that we are a trusted source of election information, and we'll continue to strengthen and develop our partnerships with the communities across the state. This also leads into our grassroots outreach. This is where we really see Avery shine. He does a lot of these efforts for our voter education plan. We'll develop an application on our website where voters or educators or any organization can request a speaker from Clean Elections to go out to their meetings on the ground directly. And we'll continue to attend those community events that are happening. We will potentially look at hosting another voters conference later this year, similar to what we did in 2020 for our We the Voters. We'll continue to work with our counties. This can be an opportunity where we can talk about expanding that Palm Card program. We will continue to meet with our tribal partners across the state, because as we know, when we work with our tribal partners, we then get insights into some of the barriers that our Native American voters experience with voting, and that helps tailor our voter education so we can make sure that we are providing them with the information that they need. And again, we'll continue with all of the events that happen throughout the year, such as Constitution Week or National Civics Learning Week, where we will make sure that Clean Elections is out there in the community, so we can connect with our Arizona electorate. Then we jump into Alex Domain, which is the website. And in 2018, after very long and hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, we launched a redesign of our previous website, and that occurred in 2018. And that is the website that we have now currently. However, given that we continue to grow in the amount of information that we provide to voters, because this is what voters need, we have a lot of content on our website, and that's fantastic. But we need to make sure that we are presenting that information, that content, in a way that voters can easily access it and understand it. And so we have very different audiences sometimes. We have voters who are purely looking to vote. We have media who are looking to cover elections and understand, results. We have candidates who are looking to run. We have folks who are trying to learn more about election administration and election security. And so given all the different audiences that we have and the different types of content that we have on our website, after doing some user experience testing late in last year and early this year, we feel that it's time to do a redesign of our website. And so that includes restructuring our site and how we organize that information, looking at how the words that we are using, so making sure that the copy we have is plain language and easy to understand. We're not just citing statute for voters to try to understand, refreshing our imagery, our design, but this also includes back-end updates as well, looking at the functionality that we provide in the back end, so that we can make sure that the services and the tools that we offer continue to promote that user confidence. So for example, something as simple as when a candidate logs into our site to submit their statement for the voter guide, issuing them a receipt. that shows exactly what they submitted. So things like that we can continue to build out on our website to make a better experience for all of our audiences, all of our users. And just to give you an example, this is a screenshot of the design that we are looking at. We're looking at something very clean and refreshing and simple. This is just an example. So this is not final by any means, but the goal is for Clean Elections to continue to be a leader when it comes to our voter education website, which is really our crown jewel. We often get feedback about how wonderful our website is. We get anytime we are quoted, we have a lot of backlinks to the Clean Elections website. We've seen our website used across the nation as a resource. And so it really is a premier website, and we want to keep it that way. So we are looking forward to the redesign efforts. And then we'll jump into our youth efforts. We will continue to encourage our next generation of voters to participate. Again, we will work closely with Avery on this. We have ideas for potentially creating a voting in civics comic book project that we can build into our existing civics curriculum. We'll look at expanding that curriculum further. And going back to the curriculum, I'll say that we've received wonderful feedback from the educator community and the civics community about this resource. And so we will continue to look at ways to promote it to ensure that our teachers have access to this tool. We've talking with Avery, we have ideas for creating a junior candidate club for our colleges and our universities, and even high schools, but essentially creating a program where, we often talk about we are looking at educating our next generation of voters, but what about our next generation of candidates? We want to make sure that we have tools and resources for people, our youth who are interested in becoming an elected official, so they understand how the process works. We'll continue to look at our events for the remainder of the year that connect us with our youth, such as when it's time to graduate in May. We'll push out registering to vote opportunities, and then doing train the trainer sessions with our teachers. We have with National Civics Week coming up, we have an opportunity to connect with our educators and train them on the electoral process and the voting process so that they can take that information back to their students and educate their students directly. And then looking at creating toolkits for our youth. So we often, have the opportunity to engage with high school students and college students who are interested in creating voter outreach campaigns. And so we can work with them and develop tools for them that they can use that are interactive so that they can engage with their peers, whether that's creating, we have a Jeopardy program that we could look at refreshing. We talk about gamification a lot and creating trivia documents. So this will be a really great, fun, and refreshing opportunity to connect again with our next generation of voters and our next generation of candidates. And then we are in 2023, but we do have a section here regarding debates. So what we would like to propose in our voter education plan for 2023 is establishing a debates work group. And this work group would be, again, assembled through Clean Elections. As we've established, we are the state of Arizona's authority on official debates. And the goal would be to bring together our stakeholders, voters, right, and candidates, campaign consultants, the media, our organizations, anybody who has a stake in our debate process, bring them together to create this working group. And I'll talk about the goals that we have for them on the next slide. But really, the work group is tasked with the fact that we've been doing debates very successfully for the past 20 years. But we know that things are growing, just like we talked with the website design. And there's been a lot of coverage and talk about the future of debates, whether it's at the presidential level or here at the state level. How do we ensure that we are on the right track with new ideas and rules and processes for our debates to continue to make them successful, both for the voters and for the candidates, and all ensure that we are meeting the goals of the Clean Elections Act? So we would bring this working group together and we would ask them to identify best practices to, again, in the spirit of promoting that participation in the political process, make recommendations on how we could possibly expand our debates to other levels of office. So for example, we know right now the city of Phoenix, they are having a runoff election in District 6 and 8. And last night, there was a debate hosted by the Arizona Republic. So, these other local elections, as we talked about, are just as important, if not more important. So do we have an opportunity here to expand to other levels of office? Looking at who's eligible to participate in a clean elections debate, looking at our format. And I think this is a very important goal as well. What are the rules of engagement for the candidates? Do we have time limits? Do we cut off mics? Things like that. What are the rules for the debate? And then how do we continue to educate the public about these, or about our debates as a resource? And really, how do we create an event, a debate that draws the substantive information from the candidates? So we're really getting into the depth of how they are running, the issues that those candidates are running on their platforms, so that voters can know what their main policy priorities are, so they can understand the differences between the candidates in areas that matter to them, whether it's immigration or healthcare, what those top issues are. And this is particularly important in a primary election when we're hosting debates from candidates of the same political party, right, who have the same ideology, but how do we really get into the differences of them? And then again, how do we identify voters who are possibly underserved with voter information, and how can we use our debates to connect them to the candidates and identify if through these best practices, what are any rule changes that we could possibly need to implement? And so the deliverables would be a final report that the group would create of recommendations that would be presented to the commission for possible consideration or adoption. And again, if a rule change is needed to move forward to improve the debate process. Our time frame for this would be from March through May of this year. And the reason for that time frame is, we are considering meeting twice a month. We don't want to ask for too much time of the people who would be willing to serve in this working group. But we also know, as we just saw with all the work that goes into preparing for debates, and whether it's procurement or rule changes, we would need to wrap things up with the working group by May, come back to the commission, in June or July with those recommendations. And then at that point, we're really looking into 2024 and kicking off our process to prepare for those debates. And so again, as we talked about who those members would be, candidates, our campaign consultants, representatives from the League of Women Voters who have a long history with debates and clean elections, our tribal members, our media partners, members from the disability community, our colleges, really getting together those stakeholders in this working group. So with that leads us to looking ahead to 2024. So we often spend a lot of time in 2023 making our preparations and planning for the 2024 elections, which will be a big year. We have our presidential preference election in March, unless it gets moved. And then of course our statewide primary, and then we're looking at a presidential general election. So voters will have very important races to consider next year. We will have a U.S. Senate seat. That would be Senator Sinema's seat, which is already getting a lot of attention right now as she has changed her political affiliation. And of course, we have our 9 congressional seats. And then at the statewide level, we just have corporation commissioner, but then we have our legislative districts and of course those local offices. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or I would appreciate any feedback. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Kimball.
Gina, you were talking about this year is only local elections. How much information can we provide, or do you plan to provide for voters for local elections? Other than the names of the candidates, do you plan to get into issues and things like that?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball, thank you. That's a great question. On one of those slides, and I don't think I mentioned this, for those local elections, when we talked about messaging, one of the notes on there was potentially doing a digital voter education guide for these local elections as well, because we want to connect them with all the information they need to vote. And again, that includes the logistics. So that's kind of a standard. Logistics are a standard. Key dates and deadlines, is it a vote center election? Is it all mail? Because for our local elections, we can do that. So letting voters know the logistics of how to vote, but absolutely connecting them with information on the candidates and the issues. So for the City of Phoenix election for District 6 and 8, ALEC has developed those candidate profiles for those candidates. So we have them in our dashboard. So if a voter goes to the Clean Elections website, they enter in their address, they're in District 6, they're going to see the candidates, their photos, their social media links, all of that information, so we can connect them with them. And then as far as, taking it further and engaging with those candidates, as I mentioned, this Arizona Republic hosted that debate for these District 6 and District 8 candidates last night. That's where we have built into that debates working group. Is this something that Clean Elections has the opportunity to expand on, to continue to provide voter education to voters in these local elections when it comes to candidates? So ideally, for these local elections, whether it's candidates or issues, we want to provide as much information as possible so that that voter logistically can vote, but also feel confident in the choices that they're making on their ballot.
And that would include the city of Tucson too, where we're electing a mayor and 3 council members.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball, absolutely. So our process is ALEC reaches out to all of the counties and then to City of Phoenix and City of Tucson directly, because they are the only 2 jurisdictions that will sometimes conduct an election by themselves, not contracting with the counties. And the counties will let us know which jurisdictions, whether it's a city or it's a special district, that are conducting an election. And then ALEC will build out the website for it. So if it's a special fire district election and we've got their publicity pamphlet, we will absolutely have that. So we often connect with some of those local clerks directly too, where they have information that they ask us to build out and build sites for them or build pages on our website for them. So yes, any election that is occurring in the state of Arizona this year, we will have information on our website for it.
Okay, thank you.
I want, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure, go ahead.
I wanted to add into there, one of the things that we will be doing, subject to this plan's approval, is there's a back end, after this is approved, we have to go through and sort of evaluate, some of the stuff Gina's mentioned, I think is one that's internally generated and doesn't require an outlay of additional resources. But one of the things that we'll be doing post this plan is looking at a variety of tactics and where they fit within our overall strategies. Because when it comes to the cap that we're under, which I think is continues to be because the cap's not really geared towards inflation in any serious kind of way. And it's more important and more of a hindrance in these off years for various reasons. So we do have to make some decisions, and will be making some decisions in the process of implementing this plan about, what to prioritize from a financial perspective. And there are always going to be some trade-offs there that we're going to have to make. And then obviously we don't want to. We don't want to burn ALEC out completely, but I just, so I think, so that scope is exactly what we're aiming for, but obviously within this entire framework, we're going to be sort of toggling back and forth between, well, what fits under this strategic heading and what fits under that from a resource.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball and Tom, just to add on a point too, as ALEC does his outreach with the election officials across the state, I have to commend him, because it's one thing to send an email and ask them to give you information and then expect that information timely. We know that sometimes that just doesn't happen in any business, but he really has developed a very wonderful partnership and relationship with these counties so that they expect his emails when they're coming. They know they're coming, and they're very wonderful in responding to him timely, because they know that this information is getting out to their voters as well. So it's really a great partnership that he's established with them. So, but yes, we absolutely do not want to burn him out.
Gina, thank you. That's, very comprehensive. One question I had is, we do have a new Secretary of State now. Have we engaged with that office at all on voter education efforts?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner Kimball, not yet, and that is on my to-do list to connect with their communications plan. I did have the opportunity to have lunch with their election director, which was nice, and I know they are still building out their team. And so that is one of our goals, is to connect with them and understand what their goals are for voter education. This is something that we have done with the previous administration as well, because again, we're all election officials, and so I do hope to connect with their team and understand what their voter education and communications and outreach plan are. So absolutely, that is definitely on there. As one of the notes that I had on a previous slide, which I apologize I didn't expand too much on, we had a note on there about county meetings. And so we have the intention of, we haven't hosted a roundtable for election officials in quite a while. And so we're looking at either doing something to that extent, in which obviously the Secretary's office would be included in that, or we're looking at potentially our staff, our team going directly to the counties and visiting them directly, which has a lot of benefits to doing that as well. But yes, we will make sure that we continue to work with our election officials. And this also includes our local election officials, our clerks, our city and town clerks too, in connecting with them, and of course the Secretary's office, so that they understand what we're doing, the resources that we provide, but we also know what they're doing, and looking for potential partnerships.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the commissioners on the voter education plan? All right. If not, do I have a motion to approve the voter education plan that Gina outlined for us today?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the voter education plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Kimball. Is there a second?
I second that motion, Chairman.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Titla. We have a motion to approve the voter education plan presented today. We'll go ahead and vote by roll call. Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So the motion passes 3-0. Thank you again, Gina, and we'll next steps on that. We'll just discuss that next month where we are, or
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we will continue to keep the commission updated through the executive director's report. And then, yes, we if we need to have items on the agenda, especially as it relates to the debates working group and our research, yes, we will have information that we can bring back to the commission for updates.
okay, thank you. All right, so now we will move on to agenda item number 6, which is discussion and possible action on Proposition 211, Voters' Right to Know Act, including litigation and staff research. The purpose of this item is to update the commission on where things stand with the litigation, what staff has learned thus far in researching implementation issues. We all had copies of pleadings, there was motion to dismiss, and the response to plaintiff's motion for preliminary injunction that were filed. Additionally, plaintiffs have agreed to dismiss the commissioners and the executive director in their individual capacity. I'm sorry, in their official capacity. So Tom, really 2 issues here. 1, the litigation, and then 2, the research on implementation issues. I'll leave it to you how you want to tackle those, but go ahead.
Sure. And we thought we might as well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And we thought we might as well make this an agenda item just for clarity's sake, rather than the ED's report. As you are noted, we're in the midst of completing the briefing around the PI and then we will have a response. I'm not sure. I don't schedule off the top of my head a response on the motion to dismiss. My understanding is that right now, tentatively, and there might be a hearing in May on that. That's based on mostly on I read that in a newspaper story. I haven't double checked the docket myself, so I don't know how formalized that is yet, but. Not that I haven't been fully informed by our attorneys. I have been. I just don't remember. Um, so I think that's underway, and I think that's sort of self-explanatory unless anyone has any specific questions about it. The other thing we've done, as we said at the last commission meeting, we, sort of outlined, and we said this to the court as well, that we would be in the process of starting to develop some rulemaking activity, and then relatedly, discussing the filing system issues that are involved here. So you sort of did that in the wrong order. So to talk about the filing system, issues, we will hopefully start to have a conversation with the Secretary of State's office about that at the beginning of next month. There are a couple of different nuances to the filing system that we will have that collectively we'll have to work through. For example, the act talks about what happens to political action committees, and the requirement that their filings at a minimum have to include essentially the same information that would be required of an entity that would be reporting under Prop 211. And then there's the issue of city and town folks who, there is already in statute, there was already and has been for like a decade, a law in the books that would have the Secretary's office essentially be able to ladder up so that all the cities, town folks who can file at the Secretary's office. The statute here certainly suggests as much as well. It says that reports shall be filed with the Secretary's office and any other office. I think the phrase is something like determined by law or designated by law or something like that. So again, the principal filing officer for these reports is supposed to be the Secretary's office. So those are some things that we have to work through the logistics of and start to get an understanding of. In my declaration in the PI, I explained that in my experience, this time consuming. Obviously, our hope is that, my hope, and so is that we'll have this by January of 2024. I think if we end up behind that, that would be a problem. But the realistically, like I said, this has been we have a new Secretary of State, new people, and that's not actually probably an impediment to being more successful in this. Also, it's kind of funny, and this is just an aside, but an important one. In addition to Commissioner Chan's service as General Counsel, Colleen Connor, who is the new election director, was the executive director of the Clean Elections Commission 25 years ago when it started. So and when we had to ramp up the original filing system that was implemented under the Clean Elections Act itself. So what I'm saying is that we've got a lot of folks, now in this discussion that really have some real experience, and that dates back to some of the more successful launches that have been undertaken over the years. So that's part one of what we're talking about, and certainly, and certainly I can say that I believe that the Secretary's office is, getting questions on, when and how this will come to pass. We've gotten a few, but I think we'll start to get some better understanding of that going forward. The other thing we've set out to do is to, keep starting with the attorneys that represent the regulated community in this area informed about what we're trying to do. try to get some feedback on, areas of the law that they may find are particularly in need of a kind of some process, some rulemaking or some other process along those lines. And what that may mean is that we may find that some of those areas may be more important than other, more, I shouldn't say more time sensitive than others. And one example of that is that while we've made clear in all the communications we've had and my comments to you over the course of the last several months and to the court that by and large this is a year-long process to get up and running, and therefore on the spending side there's very little anyone who is in the regulated community really needs to worry about from elections. On the other hand, there are folks who represent the regulated community who want to understand a little bit better some of the issues around the money that they're raising now. The statute is pretty clear in my view on, for example, the advisement. I mean, I shouldn't say pretty. I should say the statute is emphatically clear and unequivocal about what information the donor is required to receive from the spender, as part of the opt-in, opt-out process. Now, that said, there's a provision of that section that talks a little bit about how the commission might add some clarity there. It calls that out. And that might be something that rather than, I told you last month, we would not, we wouldn't expect to have a rule of any, really until, May, June, and then sort of build in a few 60-day comment periods after that. We may be in a position to within maybe sooner than then on that issue, if there's real clarity that is necessary. What we want to, because what we want to sort of anticipate, and we can handle it one way or another, but we get a series of questions from folks saying, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? On their language, we might want to, there may be some need to fill in that gap. Now, my experience and Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Titla and probably Commissioner Kimball, just from all of your years of experience tangential to being a lawyer, you can imagine that if that some of those questions are going to be, all of those questions are going to be in good faith, but some of those questions might be in order to sort of try to backstop your own judgment, if you will. It's always maybe nicer to have somebody from a government agency say, yeah, we think that's fine, and an area in which that happens all the time currently with no problem and with no lack of clarity or problem is in the area of the forms for the clean elections candidates that we receive. If you want to tailor your $5 form, we handle those language that people add to those forms on a routine basis without any real serious issues ever. So again, just a matter of part of it is sort of the education component, part of it is getting feedback on that. So those kinds of things. So I think that those are things that and then I would like to also mention, Kara has been, working with me on that specifically. And then obviously, we have the Attorney General's office and Osborne Maladon. You see Mary is here too. The Attorney General's office and Osborne Maladon are working with us together as our law firms to help implement the process. So we think that's been positive. And our goal is just to make sure we keep doing that. But we may have a couple that come in sooner. Outside of that, yeah, I think that really that was the main. Those were the main things I wanted to mention. I don't think that's about it. Again, there's no action we're asking for here. It's really we just wanted to make sure that we're keeping you apprised of progress and giving you a heads up if things if we get things if we move on some issues a little faster than others. So I kind
Tom,
of
on the timing of this, is there expected to have a decision on the motion to dismiss before any type of hearing on the preliminary injunction, or are you uncertain of that?
I am. I mean, Mary, if you're listening, I don't know if you would be in a position to jump on it, and I don't know. I think they'd be consolidated, but I don't honestly know the answer to that question. Here's Mary. Sorry, Mary.
No, that's fine. So it was about the hearing.
I was just curious as to the timing. Are we going to get a decision on the motion to dismiss and then determine whether or not we need to move forward with the motion for preliminary injunction? And I think Mary froze. Mary, are you there? That's the way it goes sometimes. Okay. Well.
Oh,
Oh, there she is. Mary, you back?
am I back? Okay, sorry about that. We know we have a hearing May 12th. That's on all the pending, that I understand will be on all the pending motions. And then how the judge manages it from there is obviously up to the court.
Thank you. Any of the commissioners have any questions on agenda item number 6 regarding Prop 211?
Mr. Chairman, it's Commissioner Kimball.
Go ahead.
Tom, obviously, this proposition is going to make significant changes in how Clean Elections operates. And you certainly understand this very well, and I'm very confident in your ability to handle it moving forward. But do you think that there's a need or a benefit to the commission having some time set aside to get into a discussion about the mechanics of this and how it's going to affect Clean Elections going forward, setting aside the possibility, which I think is remote, that it'll be thrown out. But should we set aside some time to really have an in-depth discussion about this is what's going to change? This is what the commission is going to be faced with?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Kimball, I think that, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So what we did by having this Campaign Legal Center come in was try to give a broad overview. I think that, and I just want to note that we and I know you all know this, but I just want to note that we are not we did not intend, and nor did we, frankly, if you read the transcript, bring in the CLC as if their word on what they participated in drafting had any particular weight. It doesn't. I mean, they're participating in litigation, but that's a different thing. So I think that would be a good idea. I think that what we will learn from I can read a statute, and as can Kara and Mary, all of us can really. I mean, it's really not that. I mean, it's a very clear statute, and it's complicated, but it's clear. But I do think that one of the hopes would be, after we have a little more feedback from the practitioner community and some of the folks who may be directly regulated, I think we will get a better sense of that, and that would be the time to do that. So certainly as we ramp up towards doing the rulemaking around that, we would want you all to have a sufficient understanding of as much of the nuances we can, and certainly operational changes that are involved in order to make that rulemaking record solid and make sure everybody's understanding what we're headed into. So yes, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any further questions on item number 6 of the agenda? If not, we'll move on to item number 7 on the agenda, which is discussion and possible action on 2023 chairperson. Every year we elect a new chairperson. I was the chair in 2022 and I'm still holding that position. Frankly, with only 3 of us here, I think we should probably just continue this till next month unless Mark or Steve, you feel strongly about addressing this today. For the record, Commissioner Kimball is shaking his head, so that's a no. And no, as in he's fine with kicking it to next month, I assume. Now he's nodding his head for the record.
That's correct. I'm fine with waiting till next month.
All right. Commissioner Tittle, any issue with waiting till next month when we hopefully have all 5 of us here?
Yeah, no problem. Let's do it next month.
Okay, next is another housekeeping matter discussion. Item 8, a discussion and possible action on proposed meeting dates for March through August. Paula had set around, dates for all of us to review. Of course, I responded to that at about 9:20 this morning, so apologies for that, Paula. But do we have specific dates in the packet? I apologize.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
no.
Mr. Chairman, they are in there.
Okay, let me pull those up just so we're all looking at them. Okay, so we have proposed meeting dates for these next 6 months. Any discussion? And if not, we can just, I'll entertain a motion to set the meetings for those dates.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Commissioner Kimball.
I move that we approve meeting on March 23rd, April 27th, May 18th, June 22nd, July 27th, and August 24th.
Is there a second?
Chairman, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the meeting dates as set forth in the materials for the agenda today. We'll go ahead and vote. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So that motion passes unanimously. We have our meeting dates for the next 6 months. Moving on to agenda item number 9, public comment. This is the time for consideration of comments and suggestions from the public. Action taken as a result of a public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter or rescheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date or responding to any criticism. Please limit your comment to no more than 2 minutes. Does any member of the public wish to make comment at this time? You may also send comments to the commission by mail or email at ccec@azcleanelections.gov. So if anyone in the public does wish to make comments, please raise your hand via Zoom or unmute and let us know. Okay, no public comment today. Agenda item number 10 is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Kimball. I move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. We'll vote. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Kimball,
Aye.
Commissioner Titla.
Aye.
This is Commissioner Meyer. I vote aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We'll see you on March 23rd.